Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to speak about the need to invest in research to fight pancreatic cancer. Mr. President, just 6% of the Americans diagnosed with pancreatic cancer live more than 5 years. 6%. 65% of the folks with colon cancer survive that long. 90% live 5 years with breast cancer. And nearly every man diagnosed with prostate cancer is still living after half a decade. So why is pancreatic cancer a different story? It's because we don't have a reliable way to detect this deadly disease in its earliest stages. As a result, nearly 40,000 Americans will die from pancreatic cancer in 2013. But despite being a leading cause of cancer, pancreatic cancer receives far less support and fewer research dollars than other forms of cancer. This must change, because support for cancer research will save lives. Supporting pancreatic cancer research will lead to breakthroughs in treatment. It will lead to needed advances in early detection, and it will show the American people that we're serious about saving the lives of their closest family and friends. For Lee Enselman, it will make it clear that we're standing with her and her mother. Lee lives in Bozeman, Montana, while her mother, who suffers from pancreatic cancer, lives in Seattle. Lee works hard to support her mom during chemotherapy and radiation treatments. She also volunteers her time to support pancreatic cancer patients and raise awareness about the disease. But Lee worries what's in store for her and her mom. She prays every day that her mom will be among the 6% of pancreatic cancer patients who survive. Then there's Myra and Ed Potratz from Great Falls, Montana. Know what Lee and her mom were going through. Together, they're fighting Ed's cancer. Ed recently had surgery, but the tumor spread to his liver. He now faces painful chemotherapy treatments, something far too many cancer patients experience. Supporting pancreatic cancer research will also honor the life of Lanny Duffy of Darby, Montana. Lanny and his wife Deborah were not born and raised in Montana. They came west from Chicago. So in retirement, Lanny could be closer to his beloved fly fishing. But Lanny was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he only got to enjoy the state he loved for a year before the disease took his life. Mr. President, Congress took a big step forward last year to support folks like Lee and Ed and Lanny. We passed the Recalcitrant Cancer Research Act. This bill, supported by a bipartisan majority, increased research into pancreatic cancer. It gave National Cancer Institute the tools it needed to tackle this lethal disease. But the sequester is taking back our promise. The sequester cut funding to the National Institutes of Health, which does most of our country's research into this form of cancer, by 5%. That 5% cut eliminated $250 million worth of funding for cancer research. Talk about sending mixed messages. Mr. President, one moment we're telling Lee and her mom that we're fighting cancer for them. The next moment that we're telling them is that they're on their own. Just last week, the Senate Appropriations Committee restored funding that was cut by sequestration so the NIH could beat pancreatic cancer. This was my first year as a member of the subcommittee that funds NIH. It has been an honor to work with Chairman Harkin to ensure that NIH and medical research all over the country is well funded by this bill. But this measure, which I wholeheartedly support, has a long way to go before it gets into law. Mr. President, we need to rein in our spending. We do need to get our budget in order, but we cannot hurt our neighbors in the process. We owe that to the people like Lee and Ed and Deborah. For their sake, we need to find a responsible solution for our budget problems. Folks around the country are skeptical right now. Congress's ability to make smart, responsible decisions seems to be a thing of the past. And cutting funding to fight deadly diseases like pancreatic cancer only adds to their frustration. That's because they know it will slow down the progress that we've made toward detecting pancreatic cancer early on and saving lives. Mr. President, this disease touches me and my office personally. Two members of my office have lost relatives to pancreatic cancer. Chances are I'm not alone in this regard. Chances are each of my Senate colleagues knows a Lee or an Ed or a Deborah. In support of those we know, those we've met, and those we love, I urge my colleagues to support increased research into pancreatic cancer, to support the Appropriations Committee recent NIH budget plan, and to stand for smart and responsible measures to balance our budget.